Hello and welcome. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about revolutionary thought. Now, the present is the only moment we can ever truly change. I want to make that clear from the very start. I personally consider myself to be similar to like a beetle, or sorry, we talk about Pokemon here, so I'm a little bit like Ninkata, okay? Ninkata is a little like bug dude, and then he evolves into Ninjask. Now, Ninjask is this little like flying beetle dude. So you got the little claw beetle and then you got the flying beetle. But then if you have an open slot in your party, one of the most peculiar mechanics takes place and you actually wind up with the Pokemon Shedinja, which is the sort of carapace husk of what like was before Ninjask, if that makes sense. Like Shedinja is the Ninjask shell before Ninjask is able to like be created or be, you know, itself, the flying beetle. Anyway, the reason I bring this up is because then what is Sticky Basket but the like container with which I hold all my carapace husks? And if that is the case, who then is Chloe but the remnant inside after those husks have been collected and presented, who like sort of feels the world or like experiences the present? Now, the reason I bring up like this process of like how we interact with the present moment is because there's only one moment where we are capable of actually making a difference. And if we truly believe that revolution is to take place, it is of the utmost importance we carry with us the knowledge that we are the ones that must be the agents of change. The world around us is shaped in part by how we act, but we ourselves are also malleable and vulnerable to the attacks of the world. So it's important for us to maintain a proper sort of like shell that we can present forth and like protect ourselves from the overwhelming amount of ignorance that exists. And at the same time, understand that deep inside we still feel and are able to process the things we go through. Because sometimes, you know, we look at memories and we remember moments and they make us sad in the present, but we aren't that person who we used to be. We are the person who became of that person we used to be. And I think something we kind of forget a lot is how history may be a true occurrence of events, but how we look at history is malleable and shaped. And the best example of that is the American public education system, where history has sort of whitewashed slavery out of most textbooks, and it presents oppression as sort of like a byproduct of the time rather than for the horrors it actually is responsible for, which then desensitizes people to their understanding of how the world is actually constructed in the present day, because it distorts how they think the world came about. And in polite society, we are all forced to compare these like previous mechanisms of how we believe the world came about as little artifices. Imagine if we're Sims, it's like the diamond above our head, and then we go and talk to other Sims with diamonds above their head, and our diamonds aren't always the same. But we gotta understand, we don't always have to see things through the same diamond, and even when we look at a diamond, the ways that light can reflect are far further than the ways that we see it as it shines through the prismatic nature of a diamond. You know, we are so much more than who we think ourselves to be, but it's only when we allow ourselves to be present and here in this moment. And again, It is the goal of the rich and powerful to create these illusions through religion, to cause people to sort of like dream of better days rather than creating better days for themselves. Because so long as people dream of better days, you can take their day to day and scrape the value out of the labor that they produce, and they won't be any the wiser because they believe that their payday is just around the corner. Checks always in the mail. And the wild thing is, who are these checks coming from? It's the same hands that create the history that we understand the world through. And that's where you get to the obfuscation of material dialectics, because America is presented as an idea more than it is an actual country. We are made up of people, but we have a government that sides with businesses far more than it sides with people, because capitalism endows corporations with human rights for no reason, meanwhile depriving minorities and marginalized communities of basic human rights. Like, what kind of framework doesn't allow for, like, LGBT? Like, that, you're talking about, like, dictating the experience of someone else with a conservative mindset when you abide by rigid dogmas produced in, like, religious texts or history books. At least history books from people who aren't historians, and rather that have been funneled through giant publishing companies with large amounts of money just funneling through to make sure that these school districts are getting history books all based on this curriculum that all of a sudden, oh yeah, well, you know, the ruling class never did anything wrong in America. That's wild. We all just struggle because, you know, if only we could go a day without our Dunkin' Donuts cold brew with a pump of mocha, you know, but that $5 expense, it's gonna keep me in poverty forever, because that's where the line is drawn. It's my fault, not the world that creates a system in which a company feels justified in charging $5 for a cold brew, which again is like, I don't even know how ethically sourced their coffee beans are. Honestly, I don't even know if I'm allowed to be drinking Dunkin' Donuts, because their slogan is America runs on Dunkin', but America makes up 2 continents of North and South. But so often it's used in a context that only refers to the United States of America, even though United States politics are one of the most ridiculously, like, conservative and deprived ideologies that get inflicted on its members. Could you imagine trying to control women's rights and LGBT people and minority populations and then funneling them all into little, like, pockets of society where, you know, if everyone's an individual, the only place they get to be in charge, especially when you, like, reinforce concepts like the patriarchy, is if they have that traditional family structure where they can then enforce some sort of strict dominance, which is built up off of, again, the religious ideas. Because when you consider the story of, like, the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in that, it's obfuscating that the Son becomes the Father and that the Spirit sort of, like, guides the process. Like, there is a part of us that thinks and reasons and, like, judges, and then there is a part of us that is capable of creating and producing and, like, generating fun things. You know, we don't have to be limited. We have to let ourselves create for the whimsy of being present. Anyway, that's how I think we can all sort of, like, start the first step of the part-time revolution, you know? Remember, you got to abide by the rules of the basket. You got to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and avoid doing nothing. But on top of that, you got to get big, get small, and then relax into, like, yourself. And then assess the world around you, analyze what's going on in the environment, and look for the opportunities to engage with evoking positive change in the world around you. I mean, you can always hold the door open for someone. You can always say, have a nice day. You know, there are tons of ways that we can all just be more kind to each other that really could show, like, the difference of compassion. Because, okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and just get into this. I believe, as, you know, we're gonna just assume the title of cult leader here. As your cult leader, there are three sort of principles I feel in leadership. First off, well, before we even get to that, here's the idea: people above all else. Like, when I say safety comes first, that's because the people are first. You know, it's not because I want to enforce safety rules. It's because if my people get hurt, it's a failing on my sort of like ability to convey the message to my people that they matter. You know, it's a failing on like my ability to show them that they are valued within the team and that the team cannot operate if they like fall victim to a mishap. And anyway, let me get into the three parts of leadership. It starts with passion. You have to love whatever you're doing. You gotta be charged up, energetic, and if you're responsible for equipment, you gotta love your equipment. The way I learned it is if you love your equipment, you'll want to work on your equipment. If you work on your equipment, you'll want to like understand how it operates. Once you understand how it operates, you'll start telling people how it operates, because they'll be coming to you for like questions on the equipment because they see you working on it all the time. At that point, you'll start to take charge of people, and at that point, you have to shift your focus from loving your equipment to loving your team that manages your equipment, because they do what you cannot alone. Like, they keep the equipment running for you. And your focus has to widen as you progress through this leadership, but it all progresses on the basis of passion. And again, passion for the equipment, compassion for the people. The next thing is curiosity. You have to be willing to look and learn at every step. You gotta try and be discovering new ways of doing things, new sort of ideas that you might not have had before. That's where you're gonna find your interests, the things that you're drawn to in the world. When people talk about finding their calling, following your curiosity is the surest way of like experiencing something that'll tell you your calling, because it puts you outside your comfort zone and brings you into settings where you are able to build new connections and relationships. And the final thing, and this kind of gets back to what I started with the difference between Sticky Basket and Chloe, is vulnerability. You can't hide behind the mask forever. The people who work with you have to know you too are a person. A lot of times people try and represent themselves a certain way, and we live in like the social media era where it's all about, you know, having an image and being this or that. But if you look at like any normal person, there are good days and bad days. There are days where they're sad, days where they're happy, and days where they get angry, days where they're frustrated at their situation, and days where they feel like they're on top of the world. And there's no real sort of like way to sit on an outside perspective and be able to just jump other people's emotions for them, because we're all going through this process of living kind of on our own. We all have to be the driving factor in our own like sort of present moment. You know, we all have our own diamond above our head. That's, you know, and I think if we all just practice taking a moment to be here and appreciate the things we can change. It'll teach us gratitude for the life we are currently living without convincing us of idealistic fantasies of the life we could be living. And once we're able to engage with our lives on that kind of level, that's where you start, I guess, I don't know, living the real part, the part where you're not presenting this shell. It does take work and time and effort, but I think in a video coming up, I'll be able to demonstrate with time and effort, you can grow out of things like ignorance and learn ways to get involved and make a difference. And that difference starts small and then it builds big. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you all. Again, I've been gone for a little bit. I don't want to make excuses for myself. I'm really happy that you're still here supporting me. It is incredible. I love making videos, and I love you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. So have a good one. Bye.